straightforward year, isn't it? I mean, not a lot has happened, not a lot has changed. It's a year that has dramatically speeded up the process of human control. Of course it is. And it's no exaggeration whatsoever to say that 2021 is the year that will decide humanity's ongoing destiny. Where we are this time next year will be the answer to the question, where do we go from here? Because if this global cult gets what it wants in 2021, and the pushback does not, and the refusal to acquiesce does not increase dramatically, then it's going to get more and more difficult to turn this around. And, we shouldn't hide from that fact because it's true. And what I'm going to do in a second is look ahead a bit to 2021. I'm also doing a public video cast this week on that subject. But I want to start with the passing of someone that almost no one will have heard of. A Russian scientist called Dr. Peter Garyaev. And I've quoted him in my books many times over the years because those who've looked at my work will know that I have long contended that the reality that we are experiencing is an illusion in terms of its physicality. That what we call the physical world is actually a holographic world, illusory physical, and that this holographic world is the projection or the decoded projection of a waveform information field, and that includes all so-called physical existence, including the human body. And the reason I've quoted Garyaev over the years is because he has been one of the cutting-edge people outside of the mainstream who has been doing experiments to show that what I've just described is actually true. And he's passed at the age, I think it was 79, and he was, according to a video about him I saw this week, we posted on davidhutt.com, has been nominated for the Nobel Prize. Now that would have been pretty much the worst nightmare of the cult, because this is crucial information they don't want the public to know. But they know about it and they're using it all the time. And what Garyaev talked about was the fact that his experiments of the team he worked with, shows that DNA is a transmitter-receiver of information. This has been in my book since way back, of course. And this whole process of DNA, a receiver-transmitter, receiving information and responding to it in terms of the nature of the body, is absolutely crucial. I'm sure they are very glad that he's gone, and there are people that are saying, well, maybe it wasn't so natural that he's left us at this time. But of course, what I'm describing relates also to 5G and other electromagnetic fields, but particularly 5G. Because if DNA, and it is a receiver-transmitter of information, and that information is delivered in terms of frequency, electromagnetic frequency, then if you can broadcast a frequency that the DNA would receive, in other words, in a way that it can absorb and process, then you can change the nature of human DNA by simply broadcasting information. And experiments have shown that you can change, say, embryos of a frog or a salamander to one or the other simply by firing the frequency codes, the information codes, in other words, of one or the other. And you can change, say, a salamander code to a frog code. And the embryo would grow up as frog and not a salamander. This has been done. So this is what I'm talking about. And so you can change the nature of the body. And if you're changing the nature of the body through frequency, you can also change the nature of the process of information decoding that we call the mind in the same way. And this 5G horror is quite capable, as it continues to expand across the world and be fired at us from space and satellite, has the potential to change the way that people think and perceive, as well as the nature of their body. Now, I found this interview with Gariev on a website, and it just describes how he said that we must first alter our entire understanding of genetics and move to a different understanding of the genetic code. DNA, he says, is written like a readable text. And the way that we transmit information in our body is through the electromagnetic and torsion fields. It's his research, along with the research of others, is switching in understanding of science and physics. This is what I've been going on about for decades now. The real nature of the human body. Now, this has not only fundamental effects in terms of understanding the nature of 5G and what they're trying to do, but it also has the very clear and obvious potential to be able to, through frequency, heal the body of disease and other ailments and problems. Because what we call dis-ease is really disharmony in the base information field of the body. And what mainstream medicine does, and mainstream science, is it looks at the hologram and says, okay, we've got a problem with the hologram. Of course, it calls it the physical body. Therefore, we have to treat it by cutting something out or through a chemical cocktail. But it's like trying to change the movie on the screen in the movie theater without changing the projection of the movie, which is creating the movie on the screen. And what Gariev was doing was looking at where the projection was coming from, in effect, using that analogy. And so if there's a glitch, an imbalance in the information field, that imbalance must, every time, not when there's an R in the month, every time, appear in the physical body, the hologram, because the hologram, the body, is just a projection, a decoded projection of the information field. And so if you if you go directly to the information field, that's where the answer to disease lies. And Gadeev was saying in answer to a question, with technology and current understanding, is it possible to live for 1,000 years? He said yes. And this is how he could do it. So he said, one, he would take the stem cells from an umbilical cord of a person's newborn child, as well as tissue from the placenta. Next, he would read the information from those tissues using a laser. And then Gadeev would then translate this information into a sound, a frequency, and record it on an MP3 to be listened to by the person every day. Two, he spoke of the common theme that we live in a holographic informational world, and this data is available to everyone. He states that he has the technology to address the holographic person. This is done by reading a newborn's holographic information and transmitting it to an elderly or ill person, allowing them to regenerate, recover, and even reverse the aging process. Now, how come? Well, it's dead simple. The whole foundation of life and this reality is dead simple. It's the complexity that hides that simplicity. So you come into the world with an informational field, and this informational field makes you young, gives you vitality, gives you energy. And why is it that people, I mean, you look at this COVID official figure, these COVID official figures. Oh, it's the old people. Well, they want to change that, frankly, in the weeks and months ahead. But why is it that old people are affected by ill health? Far, 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 infinitely far more than young people. Because young people, closer to birth, still have an energetic information field that is the one as it should be. But as you get older, and they are targeting now young people in terms of vaccines, this stunning number of vaccines that young people now have, and children. And one of the reasons they're doing that, one of the key reasons actually, is that they are putting, because everything, including the contents of a vaccine in this reality, is a vibrating frequency field of information in its base form. We see the holographic level of it, but actually in its base form, it's all fields of information. Consciousness in different forms. So what they're doing with these incredibly distorted, chaotic information fields called vaccines is that they are infusing those into the information field of the person, of the child, the young person. And it's destabilizing, creating dis-ease, disharmony in the information field. And thus that has a holographic consequence, because the hologram, the body, is just a projection of the information field. And so problems start appearing psychologically and, quote, physically within the information field, thus in the body. And this continues because, you know, when you feel emotion, or a negative emotion, you feel fear, you feel depression, these low vibrational emotions, I've just described it. They are low vibrational emotions. They're very distorted emotions, and they're not how we're meant to be. We're meant to be in a state of balance. And the more, as I've said so many times, every time you feel an emotion, every time you have a thought, the nature of that emotion, the nature of that thought is projected, broadcast as a frequency, either a very harmonious frequency, joy, love in its true sense, or a very distorted frequency, fear, depression, anxiety. And these fields or frequencies impact upon the frequency field of the body, and they distort it in the same way that they are distorted. This is how emotion and stress is a very distorted frequency, causes illness and also psychology problems. So the older you get, the more these various distortions, shit food and drink, etc., the more they are impacting, because all of those things, like everything, are information fields, frequencies, reflecting what they are. And so the older you get, the more your energetic field is impacted by all these things. Pharmaceutical drugs is another one. And so the more distorted your information field becomes, the more distorted, diseased your hologram becomes. One is a projection of the other. And what Gariev is saying here is that if you can take basically a frequency recording, that's what he's talking about, of the newborn child's energetic field in a form that it was meant to be, and it can change very quickly. If you're a child, you're born into a family that treats you horribly, then your field is going to be distorted very early in your life. This is how all these physical and emotional problems can stem from childhood, because of the impact on the field of the way you were brought up. So what he's saying is, if you can take a recording of the field as it was meant to be, and you turn it into sound, a frequency of course, and you listen to that, and what are you doing when you're listening to it? You are having that frequency interact with your body field. And so by listening to that every day, your original blueprint field is healing, harmonizing the various distortions in the field that daily life brings about. And as long as that field is in its balanced, harmonious form, then you can go on living almost indefinitely. Because what brings it to an end is the field becomes so distorted that it ceases to function. And that's what we call death. So he's also said that these concepts don't just apply to humans, they can be applied to everything, including plants. He describes an experiment that he and his team performed. They took plants that had been damaged on the chromosomal level, and the damaged chromosomes of one group of plants were talked to using a specific algorithm spoken through a generator in various languages. The other group had the same process repeated, but the difference was that the words spoken were simply random, meaningless words. The first group of plants became healthy and recovered, while the group given the random, meaningless words continued their downward progression. So, when people make fun because they're ignorant, but think they're, enlightened, intelligent, they make fun of people who say, I speak to my plants. And they go, how can you speak to your plants? Your plants can't understand English. And you can. What is the voice? It is a frequency field generated by the vocal cords. And so the plant is obviously not hearing your words, it's feeling the frequency of them. And words of love and harmony generate a harmonious, balanced frequency, which is absorbed by the plant to affect its field. So you hurl hatred at the plant, you're hurling a very distorted frequency at the plant, which is what hate is. And so it's the same principle as I've just described, what Gary was talking about with recording the original blueprint of the body field and playing it every day. It's harmonizing the field of whatever you are interacting with. And so then you ask the question, what the hell is 5G and this extraordinary level of electromagnetic soup of distorted, technologically generated frequencies? What is that doing to the human energetic field? And that is the real level and real reason that these things have been introduced, and that 5G has been introduced without any testing whatsoever. They then test it independently because it would never be allowed to be used if the truth ever came out. So when we are talking words between people, if you're hurling hatred at them, you're affecting them. They hurl hatred at you, you are being affected. And love is the other level of it, where harmonious frequencies are exchanged. But we have also this ace card, which is our own consciousness. And our consciousness can impact upon our energetic field, it is doing it all the time, and keep it in a harmonious state. One example is if someone hurls abuse at you. I have been known to have abuse hurled at me, funny enough, over the last 30 years. But if they hurl abuse at you, and you respond in a way that's hurt, that's angry, that's frustrated, then you're allowing them to impact upon your energetic field in a negative way with their negative frequencies. But if you receive the abuse and you just smile and go on with your life, because it doesn't matter, and it really doesn't, only if we make it matter, then it won't affect you. So these are all the dynamics that are going on, and it was a real big area that Dr. Peter Garyaev was involved in. It was linguistic wave genetics, was one way that it was described, and it's sad to see his passing, because he had so much more information to come up with and confirm that reality is not as we think it is. And like I said earlier, if he had been nominated for the Nobel Prize, as he was, and won it, he probably wouldn't have done, because the Nobel Prize is completely controlled by the cult. That's why Obama won it for peace, before he'd ever, done anything in office, and then proceeded to have more wars, wars were going on with the American military every single day of his presidency. So it's all crap. I mean, Kissinger won it, Al Gore won it. So it's all fixed. But if Gariev had got a lot of publicity over this for what he's saying, that would not have been good for the cult, and they will be delighted that he's gone.